inaugural show of three-ball walk. So that's an unusual term.
It is.
Have you ever heard of three-ball walk?
Only when you start in those tournaments where they try to speed things up and you start with a 1-1 count.
You get a three-ball
You
walk.
get a three-ball walk.
That's not the way. That's not the.
No.
That's not the reason. No, the reason why it's three-ball walk is when I was in high school, our coach Larry Garrison had a play which was called three-ball walk. Runners at first and second. You get a catcher that's not paying attention. You get an umpire that's not paying attention. And so on ball 3, you act like it's ball 4.
Uh-huh.
So the batter throws the bat down, runs to first base. The runners start running to the next base. All the dugout stands up and cheers, gets on the opposing pitcher, and essentially you steal 2 bases without a throw.
There you go.
I can't tell you how many times that worked. I never thought it would work when he was telling us. We never got caught.
And if the catcher does know the count, the odds are none of the
infielders are paying attention. So he has nowhere to throw the ball to. And the umpire is not allowed to say anything until the play is dead. So the umpire cannot say, "What are you doing, kid? Come back here." He has to let the play go.
Sure.
When the play ends, then he calls you back. So 3 of us, 3-ball walks, couple of steals with no throw. That's the only way any of us are stealing a base.
That's you're probably right.
So let's do first thing. Let's introduce ourselves, who we are, and why we want to be a part of a baseball podcast, video cast. We probably should stick with the podcast.
Yeah.
Personally, we got faces for.
You told me this
faces
was going
for
to be
radio.
just voices and everything. I would have worn a cap. I would have looked like
jersey.
a fan.
I had a jersey.
Well, maybe next time. Maybe next time. All right. So tell us who you are, Julio.
I'm Julio Sarmiento. I'm here, and by the way, we're I guess we're doing the show live, but we're taping it, and we're in Gainesville, Florida, and all 3 of us, and this is where we've been. We're baseball fans to a pretty high degree, and I actually took that inspiration and that love for baseball to the professional level, and after college, I served as a public relations director and marketing person for the San Antonio Missions in the Texas League AA baseball. Then went to the Florida Marlins, went to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Pretty involved with Gator baseball and softball, and just a big fan.
Cool. What about you, Bob?
I've been a baseball fan my whole life. I enjoyed it so much I got involved in sports memorabilia, where I do deal autographs and baseball cards. I had a store here in Gainesville for about 8 years. I do it online now, but I've been a baseball fan and look forward to do something like this for a long time. Of course, being a Gator fan too, but I'm a Braves fan predominantly. 12 all the Florida teams. So
Okay.
I just love baseball.
Well, I'm Eddie Gilly, and I've worked with baseball players since I was in college. I played college baseball at a little Baptist school in Alabama called Samford University. I was fortunate enough to play 2 years on maybe the worst team in the history of baseball. I mean, I love the guys. We had a lot of fun.
Sure.
But we were playing Division I baseball. We had 2 juniors, and the rest of the team were freshmen. So they're much better now than they were, and we took our lumps. I lost more games my first year of playing college baseball than I had lost probably in my entire life. So suddenly I had to learn how to lose gracefully, and it was not a fun process.
Well, I'll tell you what, I got a little surprise for you, and I don't know if you keep up with it or whatnot, but they're not as bad anymore now that you're not on the team.
They are not.
They opened up the season 4-0.
I know.
Had Butler there for the weekend, and 15-1, 16-1. Sunday's game 4-3, but then Monday they came back with a 12-2. So they've outscored their opponent about 50-3 or 4.
SoCon Player of the Year, Player of the Week is
From Sanford?
From Sanford guys. So yeah, they're doing well now.
Once they get rid of you, I think they can play.
Well, for a future show down the road, we'll talk about the dimensions of the park that I played in. But let's just say that the Grand Canyon is not much bigger. All right, and we'll leave it at that.
Well, then that makes that 15 and 16 runs that much more impressive.
No, it's not that way anymore. They now have a fence. We did not have a fence. Hector Villanueva, who ended up playing with the Chicago Cubs, hit 4 balls over 400 feet and went 0 for 4. You go figure that. Okay, that doesn't happen except in the Grand Canyon.
What position did you play?
I played third base and shortstop. Shortstop by default because our shortstop in the first game made 2 errors in the first game. and coach said, "You're playing shortstop in the second game." So I had not practiced at shortstop, but there you go. So I played shortstop that year. The next year we recruited a shortstop, and so I moved back to third base and finished out my career there. I was too slow to do anything else with it. You could tie me with a sundial, and that was what kept me out of professional baseball. I could hit, I could throw, I just couldn't run a lick. So that's what it is. And so been a fan and worked with some teams as a chaplain, both on baseball and softball. So that's why we're here. We want to talk about things from a fan's perspective. We're not going to get into all the trade rumors necessarily or all that, but just, you know, what does it do for our teams? What does it do for a fan? And so this is Florida. It's the 1st of March. Will be by the time this gets posted on seamheads.com, where you'll find it on the webcast and podcast. And so spring training is here. As Floridians, you'd think we get a chance to go see a lot of spring training baseball.
You think so?
You would think so.
You think so?
But, however,
It's not the way anymore.
the case.
And I know, Bob, you grew up here in Gainesville.
Yep.
And I guess the closest teams was the Tampa Bay area or the Orlando area.
Yeah. Orlando, Winter Haven,
And
Tampa.
no Major League Baseball back then.
No, it was just the Braves were the only team in this whole area when I was growing up.
But they were down
They were
in
in
West Palm
West
Beach
Palm
at the
Beach,
time.
West
not
Palm
even
Beach.
Disney.
The Tigers were in Lakeland back in the day. Of course, the Dodgers were also in Vero. But back in the when I was growing up, the closest team for a minor league game would have been Tampa. The Cardinals were there. I guess the Phillies have been down in Clearwater forever. The Yankees were in Fort Lauderdale when I was in high school.
Correct.
And then moved over to the Tampa area, you know, I guess the mid-'80s or late '80s. So it's for me to go see a spring training game as a kid was an excursion.
Correct.
And
Well,
I-
and
you know.
Eddie, you were in.
I grew up in Alabama,
Alabama.
so I didn't go see a spring training game ever till I moved to Florida, and then we saw a few, and then I moved down to Plant City, right about the time the Reds were leaving. I think there was 1 year when the Reds were still at Plant City before they tried to hold the city hostage to build them a new stadium. The city said no, and they said adios, and so they were gone, and the stadium sat empty for a number of years, and now you can go play softball there.
And they have youth baseball games. My son's played quite a few tournaments there at the Plant City Stadium and the 4 fields around it where the Reds used to do their workouts.
But you used to work for the Reds, right? You interned
That was
with
my
the Reds.
my very first job was right there at that stadium there in Plant City.
Yeah,
I used to
I actually have a ball over there with a bunch of signatures that you helped me get.
from Plant City.
Yeah, for my son.
It was interesting. I was in college, and I'm like, this is going to be a neat job and everything like that. And they had me report to Plant City on January 2nd or 3rd. No one was there, and I basically sold program ads to try to get the program up and running. I hired the parking lot crew, the ticket takers, and everything like that. And they threw me right into the fire, and it was a great experience. And had friends come over, and that my first job in baseball, Plant City, Florida, spring training, 1992. And but I'm the one. I guess I'd be the one who could experience all that. I grew up in Tampa.
Yeah.
We had the Reds there. That was before they moved to Plant City. They were playing at Al Lopez Field there. Their minor league team, the Tampa Tarpons, was there.
Sure.
And that was, I'll tell you what, Johnny Bench and Joe. The players, the Big Red Machine went through there in the '60s, and
you got to see them?
and I got to see them. It
Yeah,
was
great.
amazing. Obviously, at that time,
You didn't know who they were,
but
right?
You didn't know who they were, but you did. You did in spring training, and they used to allow you on the field to get autographs, get pictures taken, everything like that. It was very fan friendly, but it was really the only time Floridians got a taste of Major League Baseball.
Yep.
And it was spring training, and it didn't count, but that's what it was, because then eventually the games would start counting, the teams would move up north, and then real baseball would start, and all we really had was the Saturday game of the week and Monday Night Baseball there for a while. But it's changed. It's changed a lot, and I think the biggest thing, and business would have it from a fan's perspective, which is what we're trying to bring you guys. The biggest thing with spring training now, it is as much of a money-making ordeal as the regular season.
Well, do you think that part of the reason why is because, like they did in Plant City, where they said you have to do $1 million worth of renovations on the clubhouse, or we're not going to stay, that drives the ticket price up. I mean, you can't have a cheap ticket if you're sitting there as a stadium holding $1 million loan on your stadium that you basically have 4 weeks of baseball in, and then maybe if you're lucky, you have an A-League team that plays there that might draw a few hundred or even a few thousand fans.
The Florida State League, as being in San Antonio, I remember the competition between minor league teams for attendance and everything, and the Florida State League was about the only Class A team that actually had attendance numbers, and the reason for it was because the teams would you couldn't buy spring training season tickets unless you bought the season tickets for the Lakeland Tigers.
Oh,
So all of a sudden,
So they double dipped you.
they double dipped you. Hey, you want to come see the Tigers? You got to see the Lakeland Tigers and buy the whole shebang, or else you can only buy tickets. So that's part of it. But I think the biggest thing is where spring training used to be an expense for the teams, getting your players ready for the regular season.
Sure.
It became a money-making venture, and it became a profitable venture. And I think what happened, one of the most frustrating things now is trying to get a ticket to go down to Lakeland or down to Tampa or down to
Disney.
Fort Myers or Disney or whatever. And I mean, I try to catch a couple spring training games every year, and you go to Lakeland to see the Tigers, and I guarantee you, out of the 6,000 fans at that stadium, 4,000 are from Detroit, and they're on spring break excursions where they paid a few $1,000s for the hotel, the travel, the bus. They're there. They have dinners every night where Tigers players will come speak to them, everything like that. And when 4,000 of the 6,000 tickets are bought by travel agencies up in Detroit for their fans to come down, that doesn't leave a whole lot of tickets for the Florida fans that kind of just and then the other part of it is they don't need to be, because Florida now, whether you're in the Central Florida or whether you're in South Florida, you've got your own major league team anyway to watch.
We have our own
them.
team, right?
Yep.
So have you become a fan of either one of the Florida teams?
I think both, because it's two different leagues. You know, there's a National League team and an American League team. I'm still a Braves fan deep down, but I pull for the Marlins and I pull for the Rays. And a few years ago when the Rays were good, you know, it was easier to pull for them. But I've never been able to go to Tropicana Field. I would love to go sometime. I just haven't had the opportunity to go. But the Rays, I'm a big Rays fan, and you know, you think when they had Price and they had Vasil Longoria, but of course I'm a huge Giancarlo Stanton fan. I think he's great.
Who's that guy?
Stanton for the Marlins.
What's
Giancarlo. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Giancarlo, my bad.
What'd you say,
Giancarlo? I thought his name was like Michael.
It used to be Mike.
When did Mike?
It was Mike when he came up.
It was Mike Stanton when he came up,
If
right?
you got any top rookie cards of his, there's
Right.
Mike Stanton.
Yeah.
But he signed his name on the card if you got an autograph card from Giancarlo. There wouldn't be a name.
You're Cuban descent there. Is that?
He's from Los
I
Angeles.
said Giancarlo.
Oh, he's not.
He's a Southern Cal guy.
Why did he do that then? Who knows? All right, moving on. Sorry about that.
No, but he's awesome and like.
Now you want Cuban, Jose Fernandez.
That's just goes. Jose Fernandez.
Who has a different name, right?
He's been Jose Fernandez. He came over in a boat and defected and struggled a lot. Went to high school, went through the MLB draft, unlike a lot of these Cuban athletes now.
That's a whole nother story down the line. A whole nother podcast for us to talk about how Cuban
Unbelievable.
influence is going to.
But the one guy today came out this morning representing a 16-year-old Cuban defector, and he is no longer representing him because of the death threats he's been receiving.
From Cuba?
No, from other agents and because it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
That's a whole other show. So,
But yeah, I became a Florida team fan, but I'm still a Braves fan.
well, you look at those. I did some looking online to see how much it would cost to go see a game, spring training game, and if you want to sit on the grass, on your
On the berm.
towel,
On your blanket.
on your blanket.
Yeah, I've done it before.
If you want to sit on that, you can go see one for $15. If you want to have a seat where you're going to sit in something, I don't think I found one anywhere less than $25.
$25, right?
And for a good seat, you're talking like $50 to go watch a spring training game.
And you better get those tickets early, because it's not like my dad on a Saturday saying, "Hey, Julio, let's you want to go see the Reds today, and we'd take off and we'd sit right there. Everything
Those
was
days are over.
No, you want a $50 seat. You bought it last month.
Yeah, I'm not even sure any more are available.
No.
But even if they are, you're paying $50 to go watch one at bat.
Giancarlo get one at bat.
One
at bat.
One at bat, one inning from a guy you'll know. Unless you're a super baseball fan, by the fourth, you're not going to know anybody who's in the lineup unless you get the last week before they go and break camp.
And the way they're getting a lot of practices in, they'll split squad.
Absolutely.
So only 4 of the guys on that team are the regular team, and the rest are.
And the other 4 are somewhere else that week.
And at Disney World, if you sit in the grass at Disney, which I've done several times, you take your life in your hands, because you got these guys who want to get a home run ball or batting practice ball, and they'll run you right over. I mean, I was there a few years ago with a 3-year-old kid, and we were getting mowed over by these guys. And they got, "What are you doing?" "I'm getting the ball." I'm like, "I'll take you to the gift shop and buy you one." I'm like, "Just don't kill me. I'm here to,
Well, you shouldn't have been running over people. I know how you were. You were the autograph man.
Not me.
Come on, you were selling those things.
I was setting the example for the 3-year-old kid. Actually,
Isn't he one of the reasons why spring training games have gone so high and you can't get autographs because of people like him selling autographs?
I don't sell the autographs. If I go to spring training, I go to get a spring training ball for myself, and I've been to get autographs. Now I got 2 when I had my store. I had 2. They're in high school now. In fact, one of them plays for Gainesville High School with his son Danny. They would go down and get a week of spring training baseball in. They were 15, 16 years old, I guess, the first time they did it. They came away one time between the two of them at 350 autographs. 350. I mean, where were you guys? Did you ever go to eat? I'm like, but that's all they do is they're autograph collectors, and that's what they do.
And did they sell them?
No.
Going back to the difficulty of catching games, I think another thing is the lack of teams in Florida. I think when I was a kid, the Grapefruit League was it. I mean, it was big. There was maybe 6 or 7 teams in the Cactus League, but
were there any out there?
And the Reds now
there were a few. Well, if you look from the time I was a kid, the Reds have gone out to Arizona.
Cleveland.
The Indians have gone out to Arizona. The Royals, they were there.
They were at
Baseball City.
Yeah,
built a whole new facility.
Boardwalk and baseball.
They've gone out there. The Rangers were in Port Charlotte. They're out in Arizona now. The Dodgers were in Vero.
Forever.
They're out in Arizona now. The White Sox were in Sarasota. They're out. So that's 6 teams. The only 2 teams that have been added to the Grapefruit League in the last 25 years have been what
Miami and Tampa Bay. They're the two new teams.
So they're the teams. No new teams that aren't here during the regular season. And
well, if you look at the map, which we have in front of us, we have a map printed, but I'm not going to show you because it won't show up very well there. But you can Google the map for Cactus League spring training and Grapefruit League spring training. It's not hard to figure out. I mean, you've got a 2-hour bus ride from Vero to Kissimmee, or across state, 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Well, not Vero. Vero's not there anymore.
Well, wherever Viera,
From Viera, where the Nationals are.
that area, or even down there where you got West Palm, you got the Marlins and St. Louis that share facilities.
Those 3 teams, and even though the facility in Jupiter, I want to say is relatively new, but it's already 20 some odd years old, and that was built as a state-of-the-art place for the Expos and the Cardinals. And eventually, when the Expos changed to the Nationals and the Marlins and the John Henry deal and all that, they went. The Nationals got stuck with Vieira in a way because the Marlins would rather have had the Jupiter, and they swapped. But now those 3 teams, especially, I take one back. The Mets are still in Port St. Lucie.
The Mets are in Port St. Lucie. So you got 4 up and down the Atlantic coast.
But that's it. And I mean, the Orioles aren't in Miami anymore. The Yankees aren't in Fort Lauderdale. The Braves aren't in West Palm Beach, and the Dodgers aren't in Vero Beach. That whole Atlantic coast now. And if you look at why are teams going to Arizona?
Because it's close.
They're all within. They're all in
hour.
Phoenix.
So basically, they're all within. That's an hour drive from one to the other.
It's not distance there; it's traffic, and that's what prohibits you from going from Goodyear to Mesa, or something like that. It's a little bit. But all these places, and it's something that amazed me is, you hear about Scottsdale and Mesa and Surprise and you think
all different cities.
They're all Phoenix. For the most part.
Well, I've never been out there, but I think that has something to do with the fact that it's all close. And if you look where new places are being built, for Florida, for the Grapefruit League. Almost everyone is moving on the West Coast corridor down I-75 because you can't find land at any value on the East Coast side. So you can find some land where you can build a new park along the West Coast side. I mean, I even heard that the Braves are moving to Tampa, that they're going to move their facility from
Disney.
They're going to build a park over by Feather Sound on Pinellas side. So, you know, those things they're all lining up on the West Coast more than the East Coast, and then you'll end up with Detroit being the only one over there, and so then you've got a cross Florida trek. So we're almost out of time. It's hard to believe it's been 30 minutes.
It has. We've still got about another 10 minutes here.
Okay, we're still good?
Yeah, and I want to, just one thing here for you guys, and we're still trying to work out the way to make this interactive, but I'd love to hear spring training stories. I'd love to hear, you know, jot down and the frustrating parts about it now and everything like that. I think one of the big things now, and a lot of it is the players union getting involved, and players, and having been on that side, I understand it, and a lot of fans are like, wow, you know, they should come. I want to see Giancarlo Stanton, so he should come from Jupiter to Tampa or whatever, so I can see him. And the truth of it is, the Marlins will play half of their spring training games against the Cardinals in that same facility that they share. They'll play the Mets in Port St. Lucie. They'll go up to Vieira and play the Nationals, and they might come across to Minnesota and Boston over to, you know, go across Fort Myers across the Everglades there, which is a couple hours. But they're not gonna do it. And wow, we deserve it as fans, and we deserve it as fans. But from a player's perspective, look, this is March. It's spring training. From April until October, I am going to be on the road, staying in hotels, playing night games until 10, 11 at night, every single night. Let me get my work in the morning, get ready, play a game in the afternoon, and spend dinner with my family and do whatever. And that's what came out. And what wound up happening is these negotiations, you know, when between the owners and the players union and whatever, overnight stays in spring training now just
They don't happen.
You know, and you don't take or long bus rides for more than a couple hours. They don't happen either. And I get it, but again, it's hurting those fans wanting to.
I mean, you know,
spring training.
you want to see all the teams. I think that's one of the reasons why you used to love spring training, because you played everybody. It's almost like everybody made the tour of Florida, so you could be in one spot and you could see almost everybody who played. You can see them live, and I can't tell you how many old-timers, older than me, that I've talked to who are like, I remember back in the day when I saw this player and this player and this player and this player in Plant City, or this player and this player and this player in Lakeland for the Detroit Tigers that came through, or this player and this player in Winter Haven with the Indians, who all came through there and all played for different teams in a time when that might be the only time you would see them all year long live, even on TV. And they might not make it on TV even if their teams weren't in the playoff race. You might not ever see your team, and that's the way Florida fans were. You were an Indians fan if you lived in Winter Haven, and you might not ever see your team play a National League team if both teams didn't get in the
and it's
playoffs.
interesting, the only, and I don't know why the Reds, Tampa being as big of a market, there was no radio that covered the Reds. However, there was WTAN. I still remember it was like 1100 on the dial. And they were from Clearwater, and they were the Phillies spring training affiliate. And then they would carry on during the regular season and carry all the Phillies games. So in Tampa, the only radio games that I ever had, aside from the Braves, which were on the Superstation and whatever, were the Phillies. And we had the Phillies because of Clearwater. But the other part is the Yankees, they were in Fort Lauderdale, and there would be 1 week during spring training where you could see them. And if you didn't see them Saturday against the Reds in Tampa, you'd see them Sunday against the Phillies in Clearwater, or Monday against the Blue Jays in Dunedin, or Tuesday against the Cardinals in St. Pete. But they would do the Tampa Bay cruise tour for 4 or 5 days, play all the different teams in that area, and then go back to Fort Lauderdale.
Well, as a kid growing up here, you know, like I said before, we had the Braves, and before TBS hit, which is what, 77 or 78, it was a transistor radio. So I never saw, the only time I saw my favorite players was with Kurt Gowdy and Tony Kubek on the Game of the Week.
Yeah.
I never saw so when I look back on, who my favorite players were, my recollections are more from Milo Hamilton and Ernie Johnson on the radio than it is from seeing Henry Aaron live. Now, I went and saw him live when I was a kid. My mom took me to Atlanta when I was a kid. But to actually see those players, I never went to a spring training game when I was a kid. Growing up here in Florida, unfortunately. So my big thing was to when it was spring training here, and something I don't think you see as much anymore as a fan is spring training kind of, before it seemed like it was more of a, ooh, this is what's going to happen. And I don't know if it's because we've gotten older or maybe more hardened, but the paper doesn't seem to cover it very well anymore.
No.
And
Paper? You mean there's a paper?
It used to be a
You
paper.
still get a paper?
Yeah, you
They
can
still-
make hats and little things out of it.
Oh, okay. You put it on the floor of your. Yeah, I got you.
exactly.
It was interesting because I had always looked at you go to watch a game.
Right.
You go and watch a game, and as a fan, you go and watch a game. And I think it really became when I started working in it, and I'd see Jim Leland. Okay, Jim Leland, results to Jim Leland at that time were completely irrelevant. All he needed, his guys had to get work. He had to see what he needed to do, and if you're the closer. Rob Nen, for example, in 1997, you were pitching the 5th inning after the starter came out because you had a better chance of facing legitimate hitters instead of closing the game in the 9th against
Who?
3 people that are going to be in Double-A baseball.
Double-A baseball.
That year. And when you started seeing that, I think the papers or even they start treating it as the guys are just getting their work in. This isn't a game.
It's more like practice.
It's a practice.
It's more like an inter squad in collegiate baseball, which is the topic we'll talk about on the next show. We'll talk about the state of college baseball since it's getting started and cranked up, as Julio mentioned, with my team, Sanford, playing. There's a lot of stories that we want to share with you. And I got some stories about spring training that go way back from my college assistant coach who played back in the day where you rode trains into Tampa and got off the train to go to spring training. But one of the things that we close with before we move on is this: how much of spring training used to be you had to get ready to play baseball because you were working another job the rest of the year.
Sure.
And now, since baseball is a year-round job for the people who are professionals, how much is it that they really need to get in shape, and how much of it is they just need to get their time against major league pitchers?
Right. Well, and it's interesting because right now, players are reporting and they're starting to get there. And the first spring training game, I want to say, and I've got it, is right there. And it used to be where the pitchers would report first of the month in February. The rest of the team would report about 5 or 6 days later, and you'd have a couple of weeks of workout, which was the best time to get autographs, meet the players, and whatever. And then sometime about March 1st, the games would start for the entire month of March. Now they're reporting towards the end of February, and the games are starting towards the end of February.
Right.
So it's almost like, as you said, they're showing up in shape.
They better show up in shape.
Yeah.
They're ready to play, and this, it's spring training for all intents and purposes is letting pitchers go from 3 innings to 4 innings to 5 innings to 6 innings, and by the time they can throw 6 innings, they're ready to start a game in the big leagues.
It's 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks of practice, glorified practice.
4 starts for a starter.
And you get them in, and the players get, 20, 30 at bats against live hitting, and then they go a couple of times toward the last week where they'll play. 6, 7 innings, they'll get 3 or 4 at-bats during the game, and then they're ready to go. And I think that hurts the game somewhat to be ready. I mean, most of the teams are here now. Most of the teams have reported. I think a couple more days. The 26th is the last one that reports the full squad. So pitchers are already working. Batters will be here soon. Before you know it, it'll be time to play ball for real. And that's what we live for.
And one thing I want to know from you guys, and it's interesting when you mentioned Kurt Gowdy and Tony Kubek and everything, is here we are in a podcast, and it's new for us. We're trying it out.
We're just figuring out.
We have no idea how you're going to respond yet. We have no idea who's going to listen and everything like that. However, this kind of thing to me is something that younger people do, and young people listen to podcasts, and and yet we're talking about Tony Kubek and the way things used to be 40, 50 years
Yeah,
ago.
sure.
Is that mixing? Are you guys following it? Is this interesting? Hey, talk about something more relevant and more today because the old stuff just doesn't apply. Or are you someone who's just learning this new gadgetry, technology,
Yeah.
and you're like, I love listening to the old stories because I can relate.
We'll find out. So we
need
got to go.
How can they get in touch with us?
Well, you can post your comments on in this page, or there'll be a Facebook page at some point with Three Ball Walk. You can find us
If
there.
they want to email me, they can email me.
Yeah,
homecourtsports@bellsouth.net, and you email me with any your stories, your ideas, what you think about the podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
You can find me on seamheads.com. You can find
There you
all
go.
my contact information. You can read some stories that I've posted on there, and you'll probably get a comment on a couple of them because some of you have. So we look forward to seeing you, Julio.
You can just watch the show. That's the only way you're going to get a hold of me.
All right, thanks, guys. See you later.
Thanks
Let's
a lot.
watch the game and play ball.
There you go.